So, hello everybody. We're back with Deep Images. How are you guys doing tonight? I
Okay.
Awesome.
All right. We are going to talk some further about crime films. So, before we get into that, I want us to kind of introduce slash reintroduce ourselves to everyone watching. We have some incredible new talent on Deep Images, and for that matter, some people might have forgotten who I am by now. So, or wanted to. So, this nice man, Mark Baranowski, can go first with his who am I?
Who am I? I have to ask myself that frequently, actually. But Mark Baranowski, multimedia artist and extreme movie extraordinaire. Glad to be here.
Glad to see you, dude. um
Thank you, man.
Mr. Chris Gilpin.
Hello, I'm Chris Gelpin. I've written and interviewed people for fanzines um, over the past 40 years. And I grew up in Miami, very bored, so I became a hardcore movie lover. Not just hardcore, but all kinds of movies. And, and that's it. So here I am now, lucky enough to be on this panel. Thank you.
Oh,
Sir.
wow, thanks, Chris. I'm Henry Covert. So I have been doing this podcast for about 13 months. I've been doing videos on this channel for about almost 4 years. I had the solo podcast Blue Review, and then I decided, I want to go this next level with stuff, make a better product, bring some other brilliant people in here, and try to kind of, I love podcasts, and I love this format, the group session and the roundtables. So that's what we're here to do. We cover, any genre of movie, and um we try to lean away from the very, very oversaturated mainstream stuff. Though by all means, if someone has an angle, if one of the guys comes to, or ladies comes to me and says, "Hey, I have an angle on Deadpool and Wolverine," I'll be like, "Okay, let's hear it." And if it sounds really different than what I'm seeing on the fan bro sites, we'll cover Deadpool and Wolverine. But that's more the exception than the rule. So but anyway, between us, we have a lot of experience watching movies, and working in or around movies, movie journalism, podcasting, etc. So let's get into crime films. So crime films, as we have come to define it over our last sessions, some of which are as I speak already up on YouTube. Check them out. Um, Crime films, basically, were the challenge is not to cover anything by Tarantino, Scorsese, Coppola, not to cover ones we've covered before, like Scarface and Bonnie and Clyde. So if you go, why aren't they covering Scarface? Because we have already covered Scarface pretty thoroughly. Same with Bonnie and Clyde. We rarely repeat reviews on the same channel. Unless there's a really new angle we can use, and that's usually probably on the more obscure ones anyway. So that's where we're at. This can be anything from gangsters, mobsters, hitmen, drug films, prison films, industrial espionage. So we haven't done one of those, and those are a little harder to classify. Sometimes police procedurals, things that skirt up against thrillers or skirt up to giallos if they're Italian, because giallo, Italian have a whole police crime film subgenre themselves, a poliziotteschi. They're just as the Japanese have like the neo noirs, and of course America has neo noirs, and a lot of noir films will classify the crime films also, like the old school noirs. So it's a pretty wide range, but we're definitely kind of keeping to you know uh crimes, specific crimes, especially crimes with guns, crimes, organized crime, gangs, and this can be from any country, any era. So our talented crew is gonna. We've each picked a couple of movies, and we are gonna work our way through them. So first up, I'm gonna turn it over to Mr. Mark with his first film of the day.
All right. Sounds good. I will be starting with LA Takedown from 1989. It's a 97-minute TV movie, actually. Um, and I'll mention right up front is IMDb Internet Movie Database is an invaluable resource, as most of you know. So I think I generally represent the common moviegoer, um, not as far as mainstream is concerned, but just, I've got a lot going on, so I don't have a lot of time to get into a lot of research into these things, but that's my go-to spot. So, where did I see that guy from, or that girl, or what movie were they?
Right.
And my wife Riley is like that too, and she'll often stop the movie and say, "Hey, where did we see him from?" It's like, we're watching a movie. Does it matter right now? Do we, you know? So, but she'll bring up IMDb, and anyway, this is what's given me the information that's kind of allowed me to talk more in depth about these things. Um, my favorites, everything I talk about are my own personal favorites. And so the IMDb rating is 6 stars out of 10 for LA Takedown. I would agree with that. I would give that the same. It's basically about a tough LA cop named Vincent Hanna who takes on a gang of professional bank robbers led by Patrick McLaren, who is played by Alex MacArthur,
Okay.
who we don't see that often. I certainly don't see him in the stuff that I watch.
Mm.
But being an '80s fan, I mean, he showed up a lot, and even within the '90s, stuff that I was into. So, but I want to shout out to Ryan Lambie from the Den of Geek website for the following description from a December 13th, 2019 story about Heat, which is the remake to LA Takedown. This is a story about two weary men on either side of the law, one a cop married to his profession, and the other career criminal with no intention of going straight. That pretty much sums up the whole saga. Now, when you go into Heat, which we'll talk about later, that expands greatly from that basic storyline. But for LA Takedown, that's our focus. It was first written by Michael Mann in the late '70s, with story origin dating back to 1963, stemming from Mann's real life detective friend Chuck Adamson.
Hmm.
It became a TV movie, again, shot by Mann himself, again, in 1989. Its cast is mostly regular actors from one of my reasons for living, TV's Miami Vice, and also Crime Story, I'm sorry. And it was
And
basically
Man created Miami Vice for anyone who doesn't know.
absolutely executive produced Miami Vice. And it was a dry run for what Mann would rework six years later into the 170-minute epic that is Heat.
Yes.
Now, if you watch LA Takedown after seeing Heat, as I did, it'll definitely weird you out to see so much of Heat, from dialogue to complete scenes, on a much smaller scale with a cast of less familiar but no less talented actors. As a Miami Vice and edgy '80s cinema fanatic that I am, I'm talking about some of my favorite actors like Scott Plank, who died incidentally in 2002 at the age of 43. All I know is it was a road accident. I don't know the details. I'd love to, but that's none of my business. So if that's all I was supposed to know, that's fine. Rest in peace, Scott.
Yeah.
Again, Alex MacArthur, Michael Rooker, Ellie Puget, Richard Chavez, Peter Dobson, Xander Berkeley, who was also in Heat in a small role, Juan Fernandez, and Kerry Hiroyuki Tagawa. Trivia about LA Takedown was Michael Mann was glad he made it because although he never planned on it being a prototype for Heat, it was actually originally meant to be a pilot for a new TV series.
Oh, okay.
But it gave him the chance to see what material worked and what didn't, and to play around and get deeper into it. So, in my opinion, overall, I mean, it was, again, it's got the great '80s elements, late '80s, not so much '80s as say 1986 had, and it's like Manhunter. Take Manhunter for instance.
Yeah, it's pretty seminal '80s.
Right. So this was a little past that. Didn't have as much neon and flashes as Manhunter did, but still, it was a Mann project nonetheless, and it was just equally great. But I kind of wish I had seen LA Takedown before Heat because it's just you tend to, as most people do, you see a bigger version of something and then go back and see the originals, just like seeing a movie versus a book. The book is generally better, more detailed, more whatever. So so you're always disappointed a little bit with the movie. Now that was a kind of the case here because it's like, oh man, it was so rushed. Everything was so rushed. But again, it was a TV movie.
Mhm.
Um, but it, knowing that it was a pilot, I mean, it kind of it overachieved. For as a pilot's going to do. This is your big selling point right here. This is what's going to make or break a TV series. So
Mhm.
it had a lot to it, but again, if you haven't seen LA Takedown and you've seen Heat, I don't know how much I'd recommend seeing it because you will probably be disappointed.
I have never seen
Um,
it myself. Have you seen that, Chris?
Uh, which one? The LA Takedown?
Yes, sir.
right.
Yeah, no, I don't think I saw that. I
Yeah.
didn't watch a lot of TV movies back then. No.
Well, that was a period where TV movies were kind of the beginning of the end. Network TV movies. The
Yeah.
Right.
quality was starting to really dip. I mean, it didn't dip as low as it did later, but to where they became virtually extinct. But
Yeah.
yeah, 89, that I'd already stopped watching network television by then, so it
Me
wouldn't
too.
have been on my radar.
Me
Right,
too.
and it definitely wasn't on mine back then, and even for an '80s movie, and as much as I was searching out crime movies, during the '80s,
Hmm.
I missed this one completely. I couldn't even. I don't think it was a network movie because it would be rated R. It was probably like HBO or
Oh, okay.
something
I
like
was going to ask
that.
you maybe if you knew what network it was.
Yeah, I'm not sure the network that it originally aired on, but it was definitely you know, past prime time thing. But once the kids were in bed, then you could watch it. But uh, yeah, it just again being a Miami Vice fanatic, that's really my main appreciation for it. So if you're at all familiar with Heat, which most people are, and certainly more people are than with LA Takedown, you guys are a good example. Um, then you know the story. You know the
Oh, yeah.
story, and if you're familiar with '80s movies, and again, the half lights and the just the LA look in general.
Yeah.
I mean, the city itself plays a prominent role in it. So, yeah, but again, overall, without getting into too much detail or spoilers or anything, again, that's what you can look it up on IMDb for. But that's I would agree. I would give it definitely give it a six out of 10.
Okay. Now I noticed while you were talking about some of these characters that some of their names are different or slightly different configurations. So you'll get into that when we talk about Heat, correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I can
Yeah.
tell you who played what and which version.
Sounds
Absolutely.
great. Yes, we have done a session. The very first movie we reviewed for crime films was Manhunter by Michael Mann.
Good.
Bill did a great review, and which I've just edited yesterday. It's not going to go up. Well, it'll be up by the time you see this, but it's not going to go up, for a little bit from where we're standing in August 31st, 2024.
Right.
But he mentioned Heat quite a bit, glowingly. I also mentioned Thief. We're all to different degrees Michael Mann fans. So,
Absolutely.
um,
Absolutely.
to me, those are his three biggest, most richest film personally: is Manhunter, Heat, and Thief. Not in that order they came out, but I think Thief is really underrated. When James Caan died, I did do a review of the Criterion Thief on this channel. This is when I did the solo reviews, and we will eventually cover Thief. Give it the coverage it deserves on here, the show Deep Images. So that sounds awesome. Did you have anything else that you might want to add, Chris? You said you have not seen LA Takedown, so this will probably start to make more sense when we get to Heat later on. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I have not seen LA Takedown, so we are going to take your word for it. I've done a little research on it, and yeah, I mean, I knew some of what you said. A lot of it I did not know, so I appreciate that. I'm
Yeah,
learning the audience.
it's not an easy movie to find nowadays. You may find an old VHS copy of it, or I don't even know if it was ever released on DVD. I don't think so.
It's probably going to be or has streamed somewhere.
Oh yeah,
Seemed like when I started going down the rabbit hole, there was some place I bookmarked it, but then when I went back, it was no longer there. I don't remember which site. So
right,
it's with Tubi, it could show up today for all we know.
right, absolutely.
Every day they're adding titles that you would never believe they were ever going to be streaming. So I'm actually kind of looking forward to them adding it. I wouldn't count on Amazon Prime because they're actually taking away more cool titles every single day.
Yeah, yeah,
So, and same with Netflix. Netflix
right.
has decided that they're more of a film studio, and they've done some nice work.
Sure.
I actually think Amazon Studios has done better work than Netflix overall. But Netflix did Daredevil, one of my favorite shows. So you never know. Um, so moving along, Chris, what crime film would you like to tell us about?
Okay, well, can I start out with performance first?
Yeah, you
Okay,
already gave it away. All right.
okay. So, we were talking at home, my family, and my sister said, "Yeah, I just saw the Mick Jagger movie." I said, "You saw performance? What do you think?" She goes,
Now,
"I
when
didn't."
was this? Because this couldn't have been new. It had to be a long time ago.
Oh yeah, 1970.
Okay, okay, okay.
Yeah,
All
and
right.
he said, "I didn't understand it," and I said, "Really?" And that's when I was getting into weird films. So I
Mm.
hopped in the car and went out and saw it before it left town.
Oh wow.
And of course, I love weird films, and I loved that.
Mm.
And it was co-directed by Donald Camille, and hold on, and
Nicholas Rowe.
Nick Rogue. Thanks, very famous.
Yeah, very, very, very visually, very much the first Nicholas Rogue film as a director,
Yeah,
in my opinion.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And right after that, or right before that, came the one he did in the Outback with Jenny Agutter. Uh,
Is that before it? I thought that was after it.
one was right, might have been.
Walkabout is after performance.
Okay, okay then.
I mean, it's
And
pretty close to it, but
yeah,
yeah.
his stuff visually, his best stuff is amazing. Then he
Oh
did Man
yeah.
of Earth, which is like a masterpiece.
Which one
You
is
could
a masterpiece?
Man Who Fell to Earth. It's
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
like a David Lynch film to me. Every time I see it, I see something new in there.
Yeah, his stuff is very detailed, very
Yeah,
and a lot of quick cuts
yeah.
and flash forward backs before anyone was really doing that. No one was doing that in the
He
mainstream
was one
in
of
the
the
early
first.
70s.
It's gorgeous to look at. So I checked it out, and it's funny. It's about a gangster, James Fox, who kills the wrong guy, and then he's got to lay low while the bad guys are coming after him. And he overhears someone talking uh, about his mother has a place that she can rent out, or no. He hears the Turner, uh, not Turner. Turner's the bad guy. He hears that Mick Jagger is living in this.
No, Turner is Mick Jagger. Turner Purple is his character.
Okay, all right. I'm sorry. I
Okay.
my
These are
brain
important things.
my
So that's
brain
why.
freezes sometimes.
Sorry I jumped in there, but
No, I'm getting old, so I need all the help.
okay.
Okay, so
We're not getting any younger, believe me.
this guy he overhears a black man talking on the phone to his mother, and somehow it was implied that the mother was white, and they didn't uh, explain that little note about, because back then uh, racial stuff was just beginning to get
Mm-hmm.
more tolerant. But anyway, he overhears on the phone that Jagger has a pad, and he's he can crash there, you
Right.
know. So he goes there and stays with Jagger, and the first half hour where he's committing all the crimes, James Fox, it's all cut very staccato and
Mm-hmm.
craziness, of this gangster's life, and with weird soundtrack,
Mm-hmm.
wind, sound of wind going, and then electronic noises on the
Yeah.
soundtrack while he's scalping people and beating them up and killing them, and like
Yeah, some of it's kind of tense. Like when he
real
when
annoying.
he first talks with his boss. I can't remember the name of that character
Yeah,
actor. The really bizarre bald man with glasses.
yeah,
That guy, the way they shoot him and the way he like his face starts to fill the screen, and they
yeah.
And then there's this weird under it.
Yes, yes. And with all the staccato shots and the weird electronic that's going on, and they're not fully explaining everything that's happening in the first half hour. When I was watching it, there was a couple in front of me in the theater, and while all this crazy shit was going on, the guy leaned to his woman, and I heard him say, "Okay, so far I don't know what the fuck is going on in this movie," but and I laughed, and but after half an hour, and that quick cutting, he goes to Turner's place, and Mick Jagger was once a big Mick Jagger like rock star in the film, but now he's lost his mojo, and he doesn't perform anymore. So he just sits at home with his beautiful wife, Anita Pallenberg, who was actually married to Keith Richards at the time. And later on, Richards got pissed because they do a lot of naked, bathtub scenes, and
they probably did that in real life too. To be fair,
I'm sure, any back then. So,
and I doubt Keith was worried about it when it was happening. Maybe after the fact, he got jealous when he came down from whatever he was shooting.
Yeah. I mean,
oh wait, Mick got my wife.
Those were the times. Sure, you're right. So he's Jagger's living with Anita Pallenberg and a younger girl there who I guess was Pallenberg's sister or something. She's just in the
Ferber,
yeah,
the character. Okay. I forgot the actress's name.
Ferber, yeah.
If you know it by all means.
I used to know it.
She's kind of she's a little androgynous, which does play into the plot.
Yeah, she did this one film, and then after that, I don't think she ever acted again. I think she just gave it up.
Okay,
but that's all I've ever noticed her in. And when she goes to live with Jagger for a while to lay low, after he's killed this mob guy, the cutting of the movie stops, and I mean it's much longer takes and more gentle, and
linear,
more linear, not a staccato anymore, and that goes on for the rest of the movie, and it was great because it was filled with all these weird things that didn't make sense, which I love, David Lynch, which I love, and there's spoilers coming. There's a scene where a guy brings in all these paintings in hard frames for Jagger to look at, and Jagger says, "I don't want that. I want those two, but not the paintings, just the frames." Okay, so at the end, here we go. Jagger gets murdered, killed, shot.
Before we get into that, how can you tell the folks about what happens to Chaz, the main character, Chaz Devlin, after he meets Turner? Like what begins to happen to him?
Chaz's big evil, soul. When he gets to Jagger and they put him on mushrooms once without him knowing, and he gets stoned, and he goes, "You've poisoned me," and they're laughing at him, and his soul, personality mellows out. He gets really mellow, which is also why the staccato editing changes. He chills out and he gets mellow when he's with them, and he changes,
And they make him wear he wears a long wig and an ornate outfit because he's kind of like disguising as a hippie, basically.
They put him in like guru shirts and a long hair wig, and it seems months go by, but it's not. It's only like a few days. But anyway, this guy, he really makes a change, from this hard ass guy to this gentle guy, And towards the end of the movie, the first time we ever see any kindness from him, Ferber is in the bathtub, and he's going to talk to her, and she says, I need some shampoo. And he kisses her head and he goes, no, just stay here. I'll go get it for you, you know. And that's the first time we see him do anything nice for anyone in the movie.
Yeah, that's a good scene.
So he's really mellowed out by now after a couple of days with these guys. And the cool thing is, I'll jump to the end. The bad guys show up at the house. They track him down somehow. Mm-hmm. And he goes, they said, what the hell happened to you? Looking at this hippie now. And he goes, I've got to say goodbye first, you know. So he says, I'll give you 3 minutes. And he goes upstairs and he's talking to Jagger, who's in bed with Anita Pallenberg. And the gangster says, I got to go now. And Jagger says, yeah, I know. And he goes, no, you don't know. And he goes, yeah, I do. I want to go with you. Mm-hmm. And, they're taking away to kill him. And he says, no, you don't want that. He goes, I do. Because the gangsters changed and Jagger, who was Mick Jagger, a performer now, he's lost that. So that's why he doesn't leave his house anymore. Mm-hmm. So he thinks his life is over, basically. And so he feels some sort of camaraderie with the gangster. And he goes, no, yeah, I do. I know where you're going and I want to go with you. So James Fox goes, okay. And he pulls out a gun and he shoots Jagger in the forehead. Anita Pallenberg screams. And then the camera goes into his forehead.
Yeah, it goes with the bullet, yeah.
10 seconds and you've got the bullet POV and it's all animated in his brain. And it's like,
long before Argento did it.
That had never been done before. And the whole audience just went, whoa. And it cuts to the last scene and the bad guys are taking Jagger with the long hair wig down into the car, put him in the back of the car.
Well, they're taking Chaz, they think.
Yeah.
They're taking Chaz with the long bit with the wig.
I'm so sorry to be confusing, guys. They're taking Chaz with the long hair wig. That's what I meant. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Down into the car to drive him away to kill him. And the car comes this way. The car pans and Chaz looks out the window, but it's not Chaz's face. It's Jagger's face.
Yeah.
So it's like,
this confused the hell out of this one guy in particular I watched the movie with. I was trying to kind of school him on such movies, and he had a massive disconnect with that last shot. And I had to rewind the movie like 6 or 7 times. Yeah. The ending, I had to explain it to him. I had to give him my theories.
Yeah. So they had like bonded, and people in the theater went, "What? Wait, what? What the hell?"
It's metaphysical. It's not. People think too literally about movies. I think. On the channel, we call them the literalists. That's what our former. I call them. I've sort of called them that, but Richard Reynolds used to be with the show. Started using literalists with a capital L. So like fan bro, it's one of our little derisive terms about people who just not so much don't get movies, but just don't even try. Don't even care, they think their answer is immediately correct, even though they have no answers. But the literalists have a real problem with that. I mean, I read the review of it in Danny Perry's Cult Movies book, Cult Movies 1, I think. I have all 3 of them, long out of print, and highly recommended if you can turn up copies. They were like Bibles to me. Every time I saw a movie in there, I would pick a pencil and check it off. But that's where I first read about a lot of movies, and some of them I'd never heard of. Performance I had heard of. Performance was one of those movies that when you're getting into film, a cult film in like the 70s, 80s, and even into the early 90s, like I was, everyone's heard of Performance, especially because Mick Jagger's in it, and also Nicholas Roeg. Most of us had already seen Man Who Fell to Earth, so we're like curious about what his other movies are like, and everybody's like, performance is a weird movie, man, and then when I saw it, I didn't know it was about organized crime, ostensibly about organized crime. So to me, it's like a subversive crime film. I mean, it is a crime film, but it's an avant-garde one, and what I was going to say is what I read that Danny Peary kind of more or less said was that hold on, my thing's flickering. What Danny Peary more or less said was that they merge
Yeah,
into one
yeah.
being,
They're still,
almost literally. But you
yeah,
have to use a little. It's and yes, obviously this stuff really prefigured Lynch's doppelganger
yes,
theme, which he's used in almost every film and TV show he's done.
yeah,
The doppelganger. Um, so yes, he shoots and kills Turner's physical body because a bullet goes right through his brain.
yeah,
But as the bullet's going in, you do see this kind of swirl of, I guess it's supposed to approximate your life flashing before you, whatever. And, weird sound, kind of, flangey vacuuming sound. That's maybe, you would imagine it's the bullet going through the head from the bullet's point of view. And um, so when he comes out, when he says, I want to go with you, I kind of read it as literally like, I'm going to be a passenger in your brain now,
huh,
and so they embody that by actually having Mick Jagger be the actor with the wig when he looks up instead of
yeah,
James Fox. And
yeah,
that does that obliterate James Fox? No, I don't think so. Did they trade places and James Fox Chaz goes into the dead body? Some people have said that. I mean, I guess that's legit. I took it as Turner's body's dead. Turner's mind is hopped into Chaz's, and they're coexisting. So the
yeah,
line is blurred. It's still Chaz's body, but yeah, I mean, he could easily, to the character itself, showing Jagger's face is a representation that he's in there. Now, that
yeah,
doesn't necessarily mean the gangsters are going to see Jagger's face. They might still see James Fox's face. But I kind of feel like they're together. And you mentioned the Ferber scene. I think that's really key because there's one thing about what he does early in the movie um, that prefigures all of this identity stuff. Because, I think what it kind of, and again, got a lot of this analysis from Danny Perry, and then when I watched it, I was like, yeah, okay, I get that. That did help me prepare to watch it. It made me more understand it better. Um, but the guy he kills, the wrong guy he kills him because they've been rivals, and they strongly implied that they were sex partners when they were teenagers. But Jazz is Mr. Macho, Mr. Misogynist, gangster, repressed everything, and he's
yeah,
very cockney and vulgar, like a lot of, the underclass who went into crime in Britain were, I mean, they weren't really in touch with their spiritual side, let's put it that way. And so when the guy is kind of talking shit to him, the whole scene it becomes a little homoerotic. Like Chaz has been beaten up, but he's not wearing a shirt and he's very
right.
muscular.
That's
He's
right.
wearing got a tie left. So it's it's very homoerotic. And he
Yeah,
gets kind of like, sexy like, and he's like basically like, it's like he's gonna shock the guy. It's like, no, I'm gonna end this between us now. And the guy begs, not to, he blows his head off. Now that, of course, when the mob finds out, they're that main guy again, I can't remember the actor or the character, but the boss, he kind of implies like, hey, weren't you two kind of close back in the day, and Chaz is like, like, what are you talking about? And so he gets kind of exiled from, and then he, of course, he has to go on the run because he knows they're not going to just exile him, they're going to whack him. And But yeah, and so when he meets Ferber, who's an androgynous female, and now he's got the wig and the makeup,
mhm,
uh, there's a level playing field, so he can explore, like he can sexually explore a woman while also feeling like, oh, she looks like a little boy, so I can kind of indulge this side of me, and like the first time that one of them, I think it is Anita Pallenberg's character. I wish I could remember her character's name. It was a cool name too. When she shows him a mirror of him with the makeup for the first time, and she's like, "Have you ever had a female feel?" And at
yeah,
first you think, "What does he mean? She mean feeling up a female or feeling like a female?" That's what she means. And he's like, "No, I'm a
no,
man all the
never,
time."
yeah,
He's all offended. But then
yeah,
after the mushrooms and watching Turner dance, he dances with like this light staff and to an incredible song. Um,
yeah. It was a great song.
Memo
Sounded like,
from Turner.
yeah, both
Memo
from,
from Turner was co-written and arranged by Jack Nitch and Ry Cooder, who plays the lead guitar on it.
Yeah, they were great.
Soundtrack to this album was done by Jack Nitch, and a lot of the electronic stuff was him. And
Yeah.
Ry Cooder plays the guitar on the more rock songs. But that one in particular, Jagger himself wrote the lyrics and did the vocals for. And to this day, I think it's one of Jagger's very, very best works.
It's a great song. It sounds like the Stones, and it was huge when it came out. And it was
well, the Stones did re-record it, and it was on, and ended up as a B-side, and was on the landed on the Metamorphosis album. But that version is not as good as the Ry Cooder version, in my opinion. I mean, it's good. It's
sure. I'm sure.
Now there was a kind of a pop new wave band from the 80s and 90s called Dramarama, and they did a really nice cover of it on one of their albums. They had a huge hit in the 90s with I Haven't Got a Clue, which also is a very well written pop song. But their version of Memo Turner is kind of cool. But it's one of those songs I got obsessed with. And my then girlfriend bought the Metamorphosis album on vinyl. And no matter what version, and we had this performance soundtrack on CD, and I sung Memo from Turner like 5,000 times. So, it was just really, and there's a section when they really get into it, like toward the third act, where they do a whole, pardon the pun, performance of it. And it's like, I think, a music video, and Jagger kind of goes between the two personae. He's Turner, and he's got like this light staff, and this is Mick Jagger in a satanic phase. This is when he wore all black, dyed his hair black, and wrote songs about the devil, and hung out with Kenneth Anger and people like that. So this was and they even had the album, Their Satanic Majesty's Request, which I think is a better psychedelic album than Sgt. Pepper's. Controversial opinion, but you like it?
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
Me too. I mean, and they're doing She's a Rainbow on the tour they're doing right now. Their last
cool.
I know they haven't played it live in years.
Cool.
But yeah, in the music video section, he's Turner, but then partially he's in a suit, and he's actually kind of a fill-in for the boss guy. He's got his black hair slicked back,
slicked down,
and he's got the suit, and the guys that you've seen earlier are taking orders from him.
Yeah,
and it's from that point of view. I mean, the lyrics are literally Memo from Turner. They're really as if Turner is his crime boss, which is more, he's bleeding into Turner's world as Turner's bled into his world. And they early do mention, I think in passing early, that a performer in the mob at that time, I don't know if they made this up for the movie or it's true, but it was like a button man, or what a hitman, it's the same term. A hit performer would be a contract killer. And of course, obviously Turner was a performer. And it's really funny because he's playing this part when he was Jagger, when he was 28 years old, yet he's playing a character that has already become jaded and retired.
Yeah, I thought of that. Yeah.
I mean, the Stones only started 8 years before, though they were already, in the short time, they became like, well, once the Beatles broke up, they were the biggest rock band on earth, and this wasn't long after the Beatles broke up. Who knows? It may have been shot while they were still together. I'm not sure, but and yes, the following year, I believe Rogue did do Walkabout. Can you talk a little about Donald Cammell? Do you know much about him? Are you a fan or?
Oh yeah, I really liked him too. He was very, very troubled guy, troubled mind.
Yeah.
He wound up committing suicide horribly young.
Yeah. And in the late 90s, he committed suicide.
Yeah.
But he did do a great movie right before he died. And when they finally made the actual cut, his cut of it is really Wild Side with Christopher Walken.
Yeah.
And Joan Chen and
really Hesh. Good, very, very little scene. Yeah.
It was Anne Heche's breakthrough role into making movies from soap operas before she was in Hollywood stuff. I love Wild Side. Now he also did a few years before that, he did this interesting serial killer movie called White of the Eye, which I do have a copy of. It took me a long time to get one, and I forgot who was in that, but his vision.
But I can't. Keith something.
It's David Keith. Yeah, not Keith David. Yeah, Keith David is our man from They Live and Requiem for a Dream and the voice of Spawn.
And David Keith. Yeah,
David Keith. The only other thing I've seen him is he played the Jack Murdock, the father of Daredevil, in the Daredevil Ben Affleck movie, which is far inferior to the TV
I
series.
don't even remember that one. Yeah.
That was the first time well, yeah, it was. I did see that before I saw White of the Eye. It took me a long time to track down White of the Eye. Um, he did one or two other movies, so I'm kind of blanking. But yeah, the co-direction on Performance was his first, and from what I understand, he mainly dealt with the actors, and
Yeah.
Rogue was in charge of the cinematography and the editing.
Yeah.
Obviously, the editing.
Because Rogue was a cinematographer on things like A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum.
And he also shot the Mask of the Red Death for Corman, which is
That's
gorgeous.
why his
Look
stuff
at
was so
yeah.
gorgeous.
Oh
Too.
my god.
So,
Well, Daniel Holler was just as good with Corman, but he's not as well known a cinematographer as Rogue, obviously. Rogue did a couple other big films, but I'm kind of drawing a blank on what they were. But
yeah,
uh,
yeah. Man Who Fell to Earth. Yeah, it was just.
no, I mean as a cinematographer.
Oh yeah, right.
But I can't remember. If you can remember, tell me. But if not,
Yeah,
that's cool.
I
Um,
can't. But you're right.
but
Yeah.
yes, Rogue. I went through a long Rogue bender after I saw Performance. Like one store in town had it for rent, one Blockbuster,
Hmm.
and the mom and pop stores didn't even have it for rent. And I had to drive across town. Well, no, I didn't drive, but my ex girlfriend drove across town to find a copy. And I'm like, hell yeah, I'm renting Performance, and it blew my mind.
Yeah.
And I had seen Man Who Fell to Earth on television, though of course it was a bit cut, and I rented that, and then I kind of went from there. It took me a little while to see Walkabout, but I saw Insignificance with Teresa Russell. I loved that.
Yeah.
And that's now on Criterion Blu-ray. Several of his are on Criterion.
Yeah. Got a lot of.
I have the Walkabout Blu-ray on Criterion.
Yeah.
Performance was put out by Warner on Blu-ray. I've had that for quite a while too. It was very inexpensive. Also, it doesn't have many extras. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, you picked a great one, man. That's really a turning point kind of movie for me. And I actually haven't watched the Blu-ray since I got it about. Well, I did watch it when I first got it about 6 years ago, 6 or 7 years ago. It was one of the early Blu-rays I bought. They had a sale. So yeah, that's amazing, man. Do you have any
And
other
there were,
thoughts about it? I'm sorry, I kind of
yeah,
jumped in here.
really cool. There were some very trippy, moment. The whole thing was a trip, but there's one point where James Fox is in bed and Jagger comes up behind him. We see the back of Jagger's head where the camera is, and they start making out. And you're going, and then Jagger moves his head back, and it's one of the girls instead
Yeah.
of. So there was all this weird stuff going on, and like I said before, when Jagger said, "No, I don't want the paintings, but leave the picture frames," when Jagger gets shot at the end, one of the bad guys is going through the house looking at everything, and he opens up this narrow closet, and Jagger's in there dead
Mm-hmm.
in a closet full of picture frames.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's all the stuff that like Lynch, they don't bother to explain. It was really fascinating stuff. That's why I can see these movies over and over and over again
Oh
forever.
yeah. Also a great scene where when Jagger is performing for him with this little lightning rod or light rod or whatever, uh he starts reciting from Hassani Saba, the man on the mountain who, lived like 1,000 years ago. That's who assassins and hashish are named after.
Mm.
He took hashish and he was an assassin. He would kill people in a frenzy. Uh, and he was also like a writer. And of course, he had these great quotes that William S. Burroughs popularized. William S. Burroughs used Hassani Saba in a lot of his movies. And now Hassani Saba is kind of like, through Burroughs, has become a counterculture kind of cult figure, that people like to discover. And he said, nothing is true, everything is permitted,
Mm.
which has a few different meanings. And Jagger does quote that in this movie. He quotes the Hassani Saba via William Burroughs. And Jagger, was kind of an acolyte under Burroughs for a short time during that period. But when we got into the early to mid 70s, Jagger, this is an interesting fast anecdote. Jagger went to Burroughs' house to have a dinner, and Jagger, is talking, name dropping, all this kind of stuff. By that time, Jagger was getting out of the esoterica gradually, but it was still considered cool for rock stars to like William Burroughs. I mean, he did coin the term heavy metal, so for music. And so he said to Jagger, this is all just superficial shit. If you had a real revolution, you wouldn't know what to do, Jagger.
Hmm.
And I agree. I thought it was now in the late 60s when he like made our 1970 made Performance. I think Jagger was sincere about that interest, but by the time him and Burroughs met again, which I'm describing, he was more of a poser. He definitely wasn't a revolutionary. I mean, he just sold like 5 million copies of Sticky Fingers or whatever, and
Hmm.
that's some there are some people who still have that streak, like John Lennon kind of did and David Bowie, but
Yeah.
Jagger had already kind of become the
Mhm.
establishment. But so I always thought it's funny because I was like, God, Burroughs really hurt Jagger's feelings, man. He really went off on him, but he didn't really say much. He's just a straight shooter, pun intended, because we know Burroughs is a gun nut. um but anyway, yeah, but this was a period of Performance when Jagger was working with Kenneth Anger. I mean, he did the soundtrack to Invocation of My Demon Brother, which is all a Moog. It's completely experimental electronic instrumental. It's very repetitive too. It does, there's no groove to it. Though there kind of is one after a few minutes. It starts to sort of cohere into a groove. It's Jagger's just messing around, but he was so talented. If he could pick up a keyboard or guitar, he had no lessons. And I mean, I remember when he's playing backstage at Gimme Shelter, and that's when he was kind of in that same period, and he starts picking up a guitar and playing with Ike Turner, who was a great guitar player, and Jagger's playing some basic blues, but he's keeping up, and he plays the busking acoustic blues in Performance. He picks it up and he starts playing like a
Right.
Howling Wolf kind of song or whatever. But
That's
so I don't want anybody to think I'm dissing Jagger because of the Burroughs anecdote. I think uh, when he was in the satanic period with the drugs and such, he did create some amazing kind of out of the box stuff. And some subversive stuff with the Stones. I mean, Sympathy for the Devil is about the devil, and it still holds up. So yeah, that's all I have to say. But so I would have to say that was an incredible review, Chris. Thank you for bringing that to everyone's
Thank you.
attention.
All right, my pleasure.
Okay, so we're going to wrap up this episode, and then we are going to come back very soon with our continuation. More crime films from this amazing trio of dudes here. So everybody have a good evening. Rock on. Oh, and Marksman, you know what to remind these nice folks about, right?
Absolutely. Yes. If you love what we're doing as much as we love doing it, be sure to like and subscribe. Thank you so much.
Hell yeah. All right.
Bye bye.
And it's true that we cannot see that far behind. If we looked all the way in the past, we'd go blind. In the night, from the stars as they've all lived their lives, and the light that they gave as they burned and then died.